Did the bell go? I think we're, hello, I think we're running late. Delegates, commissioners, ministers, if your teams are still out, you could text them to join us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, ministers, ambassadors, you're welcome back. Commissioners, you're welcome back. We're grateful that you've joined us again for the final stretch. Of this marathon. Thank you so much. Welcome back, everyone, from your coffee break. I hope it was enjoyable. You had time to relax a bit, to have very fruitful conversations. For those who are often in negotiation processes, they often say that the best deals are struck when you're out on the coffee break, not necessarily when you're sitting in the hall. So I'm sure that the networking such that we can take the global school meals coalition to its next level. All of that has happened in the past few minutes. All right, now that I have everybody's attention, we're getting into the final stretch. We are like those athletes who are taking a marathon. Oh, I'll actually make it easier. Let's say, because it's been an easy day, let's say you're doing a 10,000 meters race at the Olympics. You know, we are in Paris and the Olympics are just around the corner. And you know, that final stretch, when you have gone round and round and round, it's that one that's when you start feeling your legs, they're heavy and you're unsure. But then you've got that courage to keep going. It's that courage that I want us to bring at this moment. Keep going, don't give up. And let's get this to the end. 2 more plenary sessions. The first of them this afternoon is closing the funding gap. We're looking at innovative funding solutions for school meals. Now, we've been hearing all the success stories from governments, from high and low income countries, and all have been making strides towards the prioritization of school meals. And yet we cannot forget, and that's what the panelists, if you listen to all the panelists here from various countries, they always say that there are challenges. Governments have been funding, but governments face challenges. So that is one of the most, I would say, common obstacles that they find, which is around funding. So this panel is going to discuss that. And they're very talented people on the panel. So we've got representatives from Benin, from the Islamic Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, from Haiti, from the Global Partnership for Education, and Dubai Cares. But I am not the one who is going to moderate and bring these great minds together. So it is my pleasure to introduce and welcome the Under-Secretary General and Special Advisor for Africa at the United Nations, Ms. Cristina Duarte, who will be leading the next session, and the Director of Sustainable Financing Initiative, Ms. Liesbet, who will be providing the opening remarks. So I'm going to hand over to these great minds whose sandals I can't even tie. It's over to you, Cristina.
Thank you, George. Quite interesting starting. Good afternoon. You have a quite interesting subject to discuss in 1 hour. So it seems that we need to respect the time. And there are some yellow cards and red cards that will be raised just in front of me if, my dear fellows, if you don't respect the time. And I'm supposed if a yellow card is raised, I'm supposed to look like that. So you are aware that the yellow card has been raised. I will deliver a 3 to 5 minutes introduction very quickly. And I'm doing that leveraging not my experience as special advisor, but leveraging my experience as a 10-year Minister of Finance in Cape Verde, where I managed for 10 years a school feeding program, and where in 2010, the budget took over and on a 100% basis to finance the school feeding program. Everybody in this room knows very well that school feeding has been delivering in the past maybe 20, 30 years. Scholarization rates, everybody knows. Nutrition, gender, and health prevention. These are the most well-known dimensions of school feeding. But allow me to tell you, school feeding is much, much more than this. And I'm not telling you because I read, I'm telling you because I experienced when delivering the school feeding in Cape Verde. Out of the 8 MDGs in Cape Verde, and Cape Verde is only 1 out of 4 African countries that deliver the MDGs, 4 out of 8 we need to thank to school feeding program. Allow me to start with some figures that are not directly related to school feeding in Africa, so you can understand the much added value that school feeding can bring to our tables. So you understand how urgent we need to find financing solutions out of the box. 90% of the 140 targets, SDG targets, Africa is off track. 90% of the 140 targets. 85%, this is another striking figure, 85% of the African population lives in countries that are either affected by conflict or share borders with conflict-affected countries, meaning that spillovers will happen. Third figure, you know that Africa is home to 17% of the population, but it only represents 3.3% of primary energy consumption. And in 2019, France and Germany energy consumption was equal to the whole Africans' energy consumption. Why I'm saying these figures? Why are they related to school feeding? Because the fact that Africa is 90% off track of SDG targets signals something very strong, and we need to say it with courage, particularly we Africans. It indicates absence of the state. We need to say it. Absence of the state in Africa. And this absence of the state has been feeding in a very silent way erosion of state legitimacy. And we do face this problem today. I'm from the Sahel region. Ask me. Ask the Horn of Africa. Ask the north part of Mozambique, and we go. Again, what school feeding has to do with this? School feeding, and we need quick wins. We need solutions in the short term that have a huge multiplying effect. School feeding, among others, is the low-hanging fruit, exactly because it brings other dimensions. And this is the reason that together with WFP, my dear sister Carmen, we have been advocating school feeding also as a peace and security tool, because it brings social cohesion and helps states to be present where they have not been for 25 years. School feeding can be the entry point to bring off-grid and min-grid energy solutions. And by bringing energy, school feeding can start in a very nice and effective way food systems transformation in Africa. The question is, today, at least in African countries, to revamp school feeding as this low-hanging fruit, the coverage rate cannot be 20%. Sorry. For school feeding to deliver or to help or to support states gain legitimacy, the rate coverage needs to be at least 80%, at least. So African countries, as the commissioner from the ECOWAS mentioned here very well, yes, you're right. Most of the school feeding in Africa is already financed by budget revenues, around 85%, correct, Carmen? But low rates. This is the trick. To come from 20% or 10% to 50 to 60%, where to find the money? So in the short term, we need to come up with innovative solutions. In the medium, long term, there is only one solution. And we need to say it, budget revenues. School feeding needs to be financed by the budget, by the national budget. But as we speak today, no fiscal space. There are African countries, as we speak, they spend 50% of their budget revenues serving debt. Do they have money today to increase the school feeding by 40, 60%? No money. What are the short-term solutions? One of them that we are working together with WFP and with my dear sister Liesbet is debt swaps. Can we convert debt service in school feeding financing? Yes, we can. And since there is no fiscal space, one of the reasons of the lack of fiscal space in Africa is the debt service, let's just take out this burden from the budgets and transform in a beautiful thing, financing school feedings. But in order to do that, we need to convince African partners. They are in this room? Yes. How I'm going to convince France, UK, Italy, Spain, Luxembourg to do that? And I have been trying to convince them that they also have problems with ODA effectiveness. Thanks God they don't calculate the rates of return, but they face this problem. So let's get married and allocate ODA flows, as we said in financial language, earmarked ODA flows first in the short term, support the increase of school feeding in Africa, but at the same time, allocate ODA flows to support those some countries to build strong domestic resource mobilization with a strong agreement. In 5-year time, budget takes over. In the short time, let's work on debt swap for school feeding and convincing African partners accepting bilateral creditors, accepting the conversion of debt service into school feeding funding, as well as earmarking ODA flows to build domestic resource mobilization. And by doing so, you'll be helping these same countries addressing state legitimacy and addressing absence of the state. Having said that, I have the pleasure to give the floor to our keynote speaker. And she's a well-known person in the field of education. She's a reference. And Liesbet Steer, here, she's the CEO of Education Development Center and director of the Sustainable Finance Initiative of our coalition. So she's our director. Liesbet, talking about innovative ways of financing, tell us how the Sustainable Finance Initiative is ready to hit the ground running. And I know that you are. Back to you.
Thank you, Cristina. Don't you love the energy in this room? And don't you love our chair of the Sustainable Finance Initiative, Cristina Duarte? You have said so much, and one sort of common theme for me today has been, I wrote some talking points and I've been rewriting them the entire day because so much has been said and I've learned so much. So I think the ambition that's been set in this room today is absolutely astounding and inspiring. Now the task is to turn the plans of vision into financing plans. And that is what the Sustainable Finance Initiative is trying to do together with the coalition partners and with WFP and others. Cristina, you said it very well. We need to start with general revenue. We need to look at the taxation regimes in countries to see whether we can mobilize more funding. The IMF has estimated that low-income countries could increase their tax to GDP ratios by about 5%. If we only could have a small share of that going to school feeding, we could make some progress. It's equally important, and I think you've made that point too, is that that money is spent efficiently and effectively. We can gain as much from spending the money well as we can from mobilizing more resources. So that's another very important point that we are looking at. But as many speakers have said today, this is not enough. Many countries, and the last 2 decades, about 44 countries have moved towards self-reliance, moved towards resourcing their school meal programs from their own budgets. But many countries, as we've heard today, are struggling, and we need to be there for them. On the domestic side, we are, and with the Sustainable Finance Initiative, looking at other innovative ways of mobilizing resources. And one of those ways is earmarked taxes. This has been done in several countries. India is financing its school meals programs from an education duty. Bolivia is funding its school meals programs from a hydrocarbon tax. Guatemala is having a share of its VAT going directly to school meal programs. Now, I'm an economist, and I know that many of my fellow economists don't like earmarked taxes. But I actually was thinking about this. No one objects to countries spending or having earmarked taxes for social security. Well, we've just been saying the entire day that school meal programs is the largest social safety net and social security program. So looking at it in that way could get us some way further. There are other options that we have found in countries that could be utilized. Windfall gains from mineral or gas exports. Let's try and allocate those to school meal programs. Let's turn this natural resource into a human capital investment. Taxation on public bads, sugar-intensive drinks, processed foods, we've talked about it today. Could levies on those be allocated to school meal programs? So that is on the domestic resource mobilization part of what we are looking at. Now, on the international side, and I can't agree more that we need the international community to step up. Unfortunately, this month at the World Bank IMF annual meetings, a report was launched that shows that aid to education has been falling from 19 billion to 17 billion. So we have lost about 2 billion. School meal programs are currently getting $200 million total, sum total. That's 0.1% of all aid that is going from OECD DAC countries. Clearly, that is not enough. So we need to really pressure to have more of those resources going to school meals. But we need to get innovative. And I totally agree with the point made here about debt relief. I wanted to actually call on a statement that the late president of Tanzania, Julius Nyerere, made. And he said, am I supposed to starve children to pay my country's debt? And I think if we were to actually turn this issue of debt into an investment into the future, we could make great progress. And debt swaps have actually had a bit of a revival. I don't know whether you've been following this. In Ecuador, we have a Galapagos bond that is reducing Ecuador's debt by $1 billion, and associated with that a $400 million investment in protection of the islands. We have the same thing in other countries. We have a debt for nature swap in Belize. We have Mozambique working on debt swaps. So there's a lot of possibilities there. But we have not yet had a debt for school meal swaps. And that is what we need to collectively work on, and that's what the Sustainable Finance Initiative wants to do. Secondly, we've heard, so there's two more ideas here. We've heard that the climate goals can be met through school meal programs. Food systems are intimately connected with school meals, and we know the benefits. Let's aim for the funds that are working on climate change. The Global Environment Facility, the Green Climate Fund, should be investing in school meals as a way to achieve those goals. And then finally, the multilateral institutions. There's been a lot of talk about how they can do more, how can they expand their balance sheets. Some of that expansion needs to be directed to school meals, and we'll hear from the ISDB here. There's a lot of opportunities there. The International Finance Facility is applying a guarantee mechanism to stretch balance sheets. So we need to work very closely with the multilateral development banks to make sure that more funding that the pot can be enlarged and that we can direct it to school meals. So we look forward to working with all of you on these questions, and we are very grateful. The Rockefeller Foundation announced a new grant to the Sustainable Finance Initiative to look into these innovative finance mechanisms, and we hope that we can work with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. As I told you, hit the ground running, plenty of ideas. And now I have the pleasure to turn to the Minister of Pre-Primary and Primary Education of Benin. As you know, Benin is becoming a champion in the school feeding program in Africa, just displaying a strong political will and recognizing the multiplier effect of this program. My dear brother, enchanté de vous voir. Blended financing mechanisms is the way to go. How are you in Benin harnessing blended finance to scale school meals? Back to you.
Merci beaucoup. Souhaitez que je puisse m'exprimer en français.
Oui, oui.
Je voudrais, avant de répondre à la question, dire toute la reconnaissance de son Excellence, Monsieur Patrice Talon, toute la reconnaissance de son gouvernement, toute la reconnaissance du peuple béninois, dans un premier temps à la coalition mondiale pour l'alimentation scolaire, pour avoir désigné en 2021 le président Patrice Talon comme champion mondial pour l'alimentation scolaire.
Oui.
Je salue également le secrétariat exécutif du pape pour l'avoir associé à la tenue du conseil d'administration du pape en 2022. C'est vrai, il n'a pas pu s'y rendre, mais il nous y avait envoyé. Ceci étant, ce n'était pas l'effet du hasard, c'est du fait qu'il y a une volonté politique manifeste vis-à-vis de l'alimentation scolaire. Il y a eu également un engagement, je dirais, personnel du chef de l'État vis-à-vis de l'alimentation scolaire. En termes d'état des lieux, en 2016, lorsque le président prenait le pouvoir, le programme d'alimentation scolaire était à un taux de couverture d'environ 31%. Et le budget national, en son temps, n'y contribuait qu'à hauteur de 1,5 million de dollars à peu près. Alors, il a été mis en place un programme spécial d'alimentation scolaire qui a été dénommé Programme national d'alimentation scolaire intégré. Et un accord de partenariat avait été signé avec le PAM pour la mise en œuvre, n'est-ce pas, de ce programme. C'est-à-dire, dans un premier temps, l'État a accepté de mettre les ressources en place et ensuite, la mise en œuvre, n'est-ce pas, a été confiée au PAM à travers un accord de partenariat. Alors, ce qui a permis, n'est-ce pas, de passer d'un taux de couverture d'environ 31% à aujourd'hui 75%. Donc, d'à peu près 600 000 apprenants en 2016, nous sommes aujourd'hui à 1 200 000 écoliers qui prennent chacun un repas chaud à l'école. Chemin faisant, je dois pouvoir dire que le programme qui est mis en place est un programme qui est exécuté dans une approche participative. Donc, le volet intégration de ce programme a permis de mettre la communauté dans sa gestion, les collectivités territoriales dans sa gestion et presque tous les acteurs locaux dans sa gestion. Alors, au niveau de ce programme, tous les ministères concernés, le ministère de l'Agriculture et autres, le ministère de la Santé participent à ce programme. Le ministère de l'Économie et des Finances met le budget en place et cela fonctionne convenablement aujourd'hui. Les produits locaux sont priorisés dans le cadre de ce programme au plan national, à hauteur de 75% achetés au plan local, ce qui a fouetté l'économie, n'est-ce pas, au plan local. Et ça, c'est la situation de départ, c'est la situation actuelle. Alors, où voudrions aller avant de revenir à votre question? En 2021 à 2026, nous avons déjà programmé la couverture universelle totale. Donc, d'ici 2026, toutes les écoles primaires publiques du Bénin seront dotées de cantines scolaires. Et le budget en question est déjà planifié et le montant est connu au niveau du budget national à hauteur d'environ 190 millions de dollars. Alors, les dispositions sont prises pour qu'au niveau du budget national, n'est-ce pas, chaque fois que c'est nécessaire, le fonctionnement ne puisse souffrir de rien. Donc, c'est pour vous dire qu'au niveau du Bénin, l'alimentation scolaire constitue aujourd'hui une priorité fondamentale. Et nous travaillons pour la pérennité de ce programme. Alors, où allons-nous? Aujourd'hui, nous avons déjà envoyé à l'Assemblée nationale un projet de loi qui soutient l'alimentation scolaire et qui doit pouvoir la rendre pérenne. Le gouvernement béninois a pris des dispositions pour que le volet nutrition puisse compléter ce qui est fait. C'est-à-dire, il ne suffit pas de donner à manger, il faudra que ce soit des repas de qualité. Donc, le volet nutritif est désormais pris en compte. Et le projet de loi a pris cela en compte. Pour également assurer la pérennité et le fonctionnement correct, le gouvernement béninois a déjà créé une agence qui pourra gérer de façon, je dirais, pérenne ce programme. L'agence est déjà créée par un décret et ces structures sont en train d'être mises en place petit à petit. Donc, voilà là où nous en sommes aujourd'hui par rapport à l'alimentation scolaire au Bénin. Alors, revenant à votre gestion, le financement mixte, jusqu'à présent, nous en avons besoin et ça se gère à travers, disons, l'appui budgétaire. Alors, nous avons fait une petite expérience avec la CEDEAO que je salue au passage au cours de l'année scolaire écoulée à travers un accord de partenariat que nous avons signé. Et la CEDEAO a fait un essai avec environ quelques écoles seulement en 3 mois d'exécution et cela a marché parfaitement. Donc, le financement est également mis en place au niveau des finances publiques, du ministère de l'économie et des finances, mais le volet exécution est toujours relayé au PAM et qui le met en œuvre. Alors, par rapport également au financement mixte, je salue, n'est-ce pas, la présence à mes côtés ici, à ma gauche, du représentant de la BID et qui est en train de travailler avec le Bénin et qui m'a soufflé tout à l'heure que c'est bouclé. Donc, la BID est en train d'annoncer au Bénin un montant de 25 millions de dollars pour accompagner toujours l'alimentation scolaire. Alors, ce financement, n'est-ce pas, va être géré à travers également un projet qui est déjà entièrement élaboré. Il ne reste que la signature d'accord de partenariat. Et je le souffle tout à l'heure qu'une fois rentré au Bénin, alors on s'entend sur le nécessaire, l'accord sera signé et puis le canal de déblocage des sous, n'est-ce pas, sera mis en place. Voilà un peu comment les cantines scolaires, l'alimentation scolaire est prise en charge aujourd'hui. Mieux, en termes disons pardon? Le temps. Le temps, le temps. Le rouge a dit allumé, je n'ai pas vu le rouge passer. Merci beaucoup.
Attention à le rouge. Merci. Merci beaucoup. I told you, Benin is a champion. Is really a champion. Now let's move to our next speaker. And is the Dr. Ammar Abdo Ahmed, Manager of Human Development at the Islamic Development Bank. The question. We are thrilled to hear about this new partnership and please tell us more about their multi-sectoral founding and vision. Please.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting us today and to attend the school meal coalition meeting today. And we are very happy to be here. Thanks to the French government for organizing this meeting because it's important to find a big country taking the leadership for such initiative. And really, at the Islamic Development Bank, we have a very good relationship with the French Development Agency, but also with the government of French, and we are maintaining regular consultation. So thank you also to WFP team. So thank you for all your support. Without you, I think we won't be able to join this initiative. So so why the Islamic Development Bank maybe is a multilateral development bank? Actually, just to let you know, we are covering 57 member countries. We are a governmental organization. So our board of governors is comprising most of the ministers of finance or governors of central bank in our 57 member countries. And we are present over 4 continents. So we are present in, even in America, we have 2 countries recently joined us, Suriname and Guyana. And we have also so many countries, most of our member countries are in Africa. So coming to this initiative, it came from the analysis that we have undertaken in between 20 and 2021 at the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we noticed that many gain in nutrition, many gains, let us say, in nutrition, because there are many gains. Okay, so just I'm talking under the control of our economists, have been rolled back by the pandemic. And so, and one of the strategic pillars of the bank is the inclusive human development. And we cannot improve the human development or the human capital development without taking care of the nutrition. Because if you look at the component of the human capital index, all of them are related to the nutrition. So starting from the under 5 years mortality, the adult survivor rate, but also the learning adjusted years rate. So all are related to the nutrition. So undernutrition, stunting are affecting the future of those kids. And we started the discussion with WFP, and then we came up with this solution because that we need to support the member country. But the issue that we have faced at that time when we started this discussion, because most of the member countries, our member countries, were receiving the food and the foods and the meals free of charge from partners like WFP, mainly from humanitarian organizations, but they have not institutionalized it. And I'm great today to hear this morning our member countries, Nigeria, for instance, and also Togo, and now Benin, that have taken this legal framework to institutionalize the school meal coalition. And really, it's good to hear that, because this will push our variant committee to support more the initiative. And we started discussion with WFP. And we have this initiative called investing in the futures of learners. And this investment in the futures of learner, the interesting things here, before going to the financing aspect, is the multi-sectoral approach. The first one, we are covering not only health and nutrition, we are covering also agriculture and food security. And the third also, we are covering the out of school children, those who have been marginalized or out of the school. Now, in the blended financing, I think the fiscal space, you have already talked about the fiscal space. And the IMF also conditionalities of some member countries is limiting them to get access to some resources. And this is where we need the support of donors to soften the lending in our in the member countries. And this is what's happened in the case of Benin. And this discussion, we have a successful experience, and the Lives and Livelihood Funds, a $2.5 billion, and we are trying actually to apply it to the school feeding programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Blending financing is definitely, as Liesbet mentioned, is a strong route, because we can bring under the blending financing umbrella, we can bring private funds. And believe me, they are ready to come. We usually think that they will not be attracted to this conversation. They are ready to come, and they want to come. We need to come up with a strong value proposition. Now, I have the pleasure to move to Mr. Ferdinando Regalia, Social Sector Manager of the Inter-American Development Bank. And the question is, I would say similar, the one that I have asked to the Islamic Development Bank, is about blended finance and other mechanisms. How innovative you think the Inter-American Development Bank is being in the last, let's say, 2-3 years?
Thanks very much. First of all, thanks for the organizer. It's a great pleasure to be here. And this is not a competition, but I'm gonna try to carry the last 1,000 meters for the 9,000 meters were carried by all the representatives from Latin America and Caribbean that were in different panels, and they're really leader in this area. And then see many one year from Colombia to Brazil to Ecuador, Guatemala, and Honduras. So let's start with some data. Latin American Caribbean countries have in the last 20 years increased substantially the public budget for education, yet education expenditure per students are just 30% of OECD average, PPPP. That's a reality. And plus all the problems that we know, very tight fiscal stance going forward, and ODA, so overseas development assistance in the sector, just plummeting in Latin America and the Caribbean. So what the IDB has done, let's start from, or is doing, let's start from what is not innovative. In 2023, we pump up our investment in education substantially to over 1 billion. And we are planning in the new institutional strategy to prioritize this as a key sector within the social sector. The second aspect, as we joined the school meal coalition, because we think that we need to engage also in financing of this program. Although Latin America spent roughly $7.5 billion and 99% is country financing, we know there are low income countries in the region that need to go a stretch further, because still about 50% of kids in the region are not receiving any school meal. And we all have talked about the great things about school meal, but there is one thing I would like to stress that has not been said. A lot of countries in Latin America, given the enormous hit that was taken by the country in terms of learning outcomes, are trying to expand the school days. This is not possible without very robust school meal. So now let's come to what we can do in innovative financing. First of all, we are trying big effort with nails to get some concessionality to blend with our loans or our co-financing. I think a great case is the collaboration we have with GPE and with other donors, and the Minister of Education of Haiti is going to talk about this, about the package that we're putting together for Haiti of about $44 million in grants. These are all grants, but it's under one strategy, and that is very, very important. And we would like to do more of that. Believe me, if you have a $20 million loan for, let's say, Honduras or Guatemala, or $50 million loan, and you come with 2 or 3 million of concessionality, you really convince the Minister of Finance to actually get that financing rather than others. It's very powerful blending. Second, this is already mentioned, the IDB has been at the forefront with innovative financial instrument for the debt for nature transaction we are just talking about. The IDB was involved and is involved in all three. And these are large, and I want to stress, are not for all countries. They are very complex deals. They take months to prepare, and they're all market operation, where basically governments are buying back their bonds and their loans and substituting them with other commercially issued bonds or loans, but with a guarantee from the IDB and other partner financial institutions, which lower enormously their borrowing cost. Just as a number, Ecuador did an operation with the backing of IDB and other partners for $1.6 billion of rebuying debt. They free up 323 million for investing in conservation efforts for the Galapagos. Similar in numbers, of course, the value are lower for Barbados and Belize. So we do have the technology to do that. We need to apply to the social sector, particularly to the education sector. And finally, and we have been very glad to partner with the WFP for the first report on the status of school meal in Latin America and Caribbean. Yet we believe there is a strong research and technical agenda going forward. Efficiency is important. Waste needs to be reduced. Targeting has to be improved. Quality has to be improved. And this is an area where we are, over the coming year also, want to focus some grant resources with partner, because we cannot do it alone, to strengthen this part also of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And congratulations. I read the paper that is in the package of this meeting. The Galapagos debt swap is amazing. Is amazing. is definitely a breakthrough, definitely. And now I have the pleasure to move to my dear neighbor here, the Minister of Education and Vocational Training of Haiti, Mr. Nesmy. We are here, would like to ask you about the case that has been also mentioned by Ferdinando Regalia, in terms of the multiplier financing mechanism. It seems that together you manage to build something with a huge multiplier financing mechanism dimension, and you'd like to understand how it works. Back to you.
Thanks for your question, but I will answer in French. D'abord, je voudrais remercier la coalition pour l'alimentation scolaire remercier doublement la coalition pour cette invitation et pour ce panel. Je dis pour ce panel parce que je m'étais promis au prochain panel de ne pas parler de crise pour Haïti. Et je suis heureux d'être dans un panel où je veux parler des opportunités qu'Haïti profite. En effet, je voudrais vous donner quelques éléments de contexte parce que très rapidement, pour répondre à la question, nous avons deux types de fonds innovants. Un fonds innovant national et le multiplicateur du partenariat mondial pour l'éducation avec d'autres partenaires que je vais expliquer très rapidement. En Haïti, il y a quelques années, nous avons développé un fonds dédié à l'éducation qui s'appelle le Fonds national pour l'éducation, voté par le Parlement. Et au niveau de ce fonds, il y a une partie qui est dédiée pour l'alimentation scolaire. Ce fonds est financé par les transferts de la diaspora et par un pourcentage qui est pris sur les appels téléphoniques de la diaspora vers Haïti. Et avec ce fonds innovant qui vient en plus du trésor public, ceci nous a permis, les chiffres que je vais annoncer tout à l'heure, en plus du multiplier, d'arriver à augmenter la couverture, la qualité et l'ancrage au niveau des produits locaux. Maintenant, en plus de ce fonds innovant national, nous venons de conclure avec plusieurs partenaires, dont je salue la présence ici en particulier. Il y a la Banque interaméricaine de développement qui fait office de l'agent partenaire pour mettre en place un mécanisme que le partenariat mondial pour l'éducation permet au pays de l'utiliser comme seed money pour mobiliser d'autres ressources. Je laisserai à la directrice exécutive du GPE qui est présente de faire un peu plus d'explications, mais j'ai aussi la casquette du président du comité des finances du partenariat. Je peux vous dire, du partenariat mondial pour l'éducation, je peux vous dire que c'est une avancée majeure pour les pays en développement, dans la mesure où on peut l'utiliser comme don pour lever d'autres financements et aussi on peut l'utiliser pour réduire les taux d'intérêt sur les prêts concessionnels pour que les pays puissent avoir des financements additionnels. C'est très innovant. Mais avec ces deux sources d'innovation, nous pouvons dire qu'à partir de 2024, nous passerons de 30% de couverture du préscolaire aux 9 premières années d'année obligatoire, donc ce qu'on appelle l'école fondamentale, à 50%. Nous serons à 50%, de 30% à 50%. Nous serons à 1,5 million d'élèves couverts du préscolaire à la 9e année fondamentale selon les prévisions. Et avec ces deux sources de financement qui viennent du financement, c'est environ 76 millions de dollars, dont 15 millions viennent de la Banque interaméricaine de développement, 10 millions viennent de Education Able Of, fonds du Qatar, et 32 millions viennent du programme américain McGovern-Dole, qui est justement géré par le PAM, donc c'est le PAM qui va financer, et tout cela, on a pu lever ces fonds à cause des 19 millions du PME, dont 11 millions, iront à l'alimentation scolaire. C'est une très bonne nouvelle pour Haïti. Mais alors, la deuxième chose qui est très importante dans ce virage que nous sommes en train de faire vers l'alimentation scolaire, c'est les leçons que nous sommes en train de tirer. Je crois que j'ai entendu beaucoup d'excellentes choses ce matin, depuis ce matin. Mais le focus aussi, c'est que nous ne sommes pas les seuls à pouvoir faire bouger cet agenda. En Haïti, nous faisons l'expérience en introduisant de nouveaux cours dans le curriculum, en particulier sur les activités productives. Les élèves, ceux qui bénéficient de ce montage, ne doivent pas être uniquement que des bénéficiaires, ils peuvent être acteurs. Nous mettons en place beaucoup de jardins scolaires pour que les enfants participent à la production, même s'il y a une vertu pédagogique. Nous sommes en train de mettre en place, pour prendre le relais de ce montage d'alimentation scolaire, les lycées techniques agricoles. Et je sais que le Bénin fait de même aussi, pour construire des unités économiques à vocation pédagogique. Et que ces jeunes vont produire ce qu'on peut acheter pour la cantine scolaire. Comme ça, ce n'est pas une assemblée seulement d'adultes qui font les plans, eux aussi sont acteurs dans la production de la chaîne. Et je crois que ceci, c'est très important. Je conclurai en disant la chose suivante. Bien sûr, nous allons augmenter la couverture. Bien sûr, aussi, et grâce à nos partenariats et à la politique que nous mettons en place, nous allons augmenter le pourcentage de produits locaux qui était à 20% en 2020, qui sera en 2024 à 60% selon les prévisions qu'on fait, parce que tous ces nouveaux financements vont pouvoir alimenter le virage vers les produits locaux jusqu'à l'objectif de 2030, idéalement de 100%. Pour conclure, il est très important que nous comprenions dans les indicateurs que nous utilisons. Il ne s'agit pas uniquement des taux de couverture, c'est combien de jours passent les enfants à l'école. Et je profite de l'occasion pour remercier, parce que nous faisons à la fois l'urgence et la transformation. Je vois Yasmine Chérif qui est présent. C'est grâce à nos partenaires qui sont présents, Education Cannot Wait, l'ABID, la Banque mondiale, nous avons mis en place un programme de compensation d'apprentissage pour qu'il ne s'agisse pas seulement d'avoir la nourriture, mais que les enfants soient en salle de classe. Voilà, je vous remercie tous.
Congratulations. Creating strong value. Amazing. I'm looking at the time. Let's move fast. And now I turn to Mrs. Laura Frigenti, the CEO of Global Partnership for Education. We have already heard about Global Partnership for Education's multiplier financing mechanism, very well explained here. Please tell us what else the Global Partnership for Education is doing to support the financing of school meals.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will not even dare going into the multiplier after the very eloquent explanation of my friend, Minister Manigat. But I just want to say that that instrument, which is probably the most popular innovative financing instrument that GPE has put in place, but not the only one, is really, I would say, an indication of the fact that we really need to continue pressing for, traditional financing for education. But at the same time, and I think that the sobering information that Liesbet shared with us make me think that we hope for the best and prepare for the worst, that the future of the sector is really in thinking outside of the box. And I'm so glad to be here on stage today with representatives of so many institutions that for many years have been thinking about bringing innovation and different sources of funding and different instruments to the education sector, and we shall continue doing so. Now to the school meals. GPE has been working on school nutrition and school meals for quite some time, before actually the coalition was established. And in a way, we love very much being part of this effort because it crystallizes the efforts that we were doing individually with individual countries. But just to throw a number in the room, I mean, since 2016, we have been funding about 50 million in school nutrition and school meal programs with various countries through our traditional system transformation programs, and we will continue doing so. This is a very important part that is so closely connected with the ability of children to learn in school that really needs to be part of the education strategies of all countries, at least all countries that we will be working on. Now to what are we doing now today? I am particularly proud and particularly happy to announce that, working very closely with the WFP, whose staff and colleagues I really want to thank for this collaboration, we are launching today a new initiative, the School Nutrition Technical Assistance Facilities, that will strengthen the country's capacity to achieve increasingly sustainable, gender responsible, and nationally owned school meals program, providing school children with safe, diverse, nutritious food that are locally purchased. This technical assistance facility, which we are starting on a pilot base, but that we can already see that is going to take off in a much larger scale, will help countries achieve 4 main objectives. The first one, it will give them a better access to sustainable financing to implement school meals and program. It will make them understand where are the potential sources of financing, how this can be approached, and what is the best suitable solution for each individual particular countries. It will help them improve the policy and legal frameworks that are necessary to have in place in countries to actually have well-functioning and sustainable school nutrition, school meal system. The countries will be able to improve the implementation of locally grown and purchased school meal programs. And this is a very important, how can I say, rippling effect on local economies, in particular, to local women that are really the greatest beneficiaries of this type of activities. And finally, it will strengthen the evidence and exchange between countries on their experiences, consolidating and expanding their national school meals program. I like to say that this is really a very good example of why education it is so important, because education as a sector is much more than learning. And I think that all that we have been hearing today in this very invigorating meeting about school meals and the work of the coalition drives us really in that direction of thinking about the school as the locus where multiple services are given to children. And so the role of education is really to multiply the benefits to children of being in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, moving to our last speaker, a pleasure, the CEO and Vice Chairman of Dubai Cares, Mr. Tariq. Please tell us, what is Dubai Cares doing to create innovative financing opportunities for school meals?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, to me personally, it's been a long journey. 12 years ago, I had 2 dreams. One became effective and true, and that's the School Meals Coalition. We've been working for a very long time on that. The second dream was to establish the first ever social impact bond in education, Cristina. And although to be part of a global consortium, which is the School Meals Coalition today, at that time, the sector was not advanced. They don't understand the language that you're talking until Carmen came back, and then we made it happen. So thank God for that. But for the social impact bond, which banks will you bring to convince them to have a social impact bond that can yield interest for the investors and for the grant givers? How will they hit on their targets? That was the issue. And there were attempts from other banks to do such a social impact bond. But if you're talking about government schools, public schooling, there is no tuition fee from schooling. So how will you get money into a social impact bond in education And the best way to do that is connect the social impact bond with school meals. That was the idea. And that's what we've been working with the WFP. So before speaking to the WFP, I'm a former banker as well. So with my connections, I spoke to Crédit Agricole Bank in Paris, and they agreed to create the first ever social impact bond in education, but that will be through school meals. So that will be Crédit Agricole Bank. Now, Grameen Crédit Agricole Foundation will be working towards the microfinancing. So they will microfinance the farmers and they will build the capacities of the women. What we're going to do in that country, we're going to hopefully erect a factory that we will assemble all the vegetation that's coming from the farmers, from the local farmers, into that factory. And that factory hopefully will get jobs created. It will be climate friendly. We will have the mothers who will run the centralized kitchen in those countries. The WFP will be core at the operations with the government. And the good news, we have selected the country and it is Senegal, and we are already in touch. And already I gave the first grant to the Crédit Agricole Bank to start the business case. So that's the white paper, the business case study on how we're going to make money as a bond. And just to wrap up very, very quickly, we're going to announce the launch of this first ever social impact bond in education at the Rewired Summit end of the year at the COP28. The School Meals Coalition will have 2 high-level sessions. They can brag on all their achievements, but they also have a session on innovative financing, and the School Meals Coalition will be positioned as well at the Rewired Summit. Just to let everyone know, the Rewired Summit will be on the 8th of December at the COP28, and we will be tackling a lot of stuff. School meals is just one of them, but with the GP, we're also talking about education transformation as well, and GP will be with us also on the innovative financing model. So hopefully the announcement of this first ever social impact bond will be hopefully in the next slightly less than 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have 1 second and I will to wrap up. 1 second. It's amazing how the composition of this panel. First pillar was clear from Benin and Haiti. You need political will. You need vision to build strong, clear, and forward-looking policy frameworks. Benin and Haiti were clear. If you don't have that, maybe the most important pillar will be missing. Once you are that, or once you have that, you are ready to start mobilizing Liesbet and Laura. Ready. Do you want Liesbet and Laura? Get the political will, get the strong policy frameworks. They come, and Laura said it very clear. She's about to launch in a couple of, or have just launched, a facility to provide technical assistance, capacity building. Without strong country systems, school feeding will never be sustainable. Once you have these two, we are already, your risk profile is already looking good. Once your risk profile is already looking good, you are ready for the Islamic Bank, the Inter-American Bank, and Dubai Cares. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Another round of applause. That was powerful. That was a very powerful session, and one where we heard, and I don't want to go back to it again because then you would water down that conclusion from Cristina. So Cristina and your panel, thank you so much. Congratulations. Please come this way because